We back. Listen, guys, I told y'all we're gonna be a little bit more consistent, man. Welcome in to the Bluebloods. Listen, always joined by my co-host, Coach Leroy Frederick over at Alcorn State. Big week, big win this weekend, Coach. Got back on the right side of things, man. Got a chance to make a little run now. But Coach, man, we had to just go ahead and knock this out on a Sunday, man. Me and you got a really busy early week, so we knew we weren't going to be able to do a show Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. So we didn't want to let this sit for long. Coach, man, chaos weekend. We both got to be out of here by 1, man. So let's get this thing going. How we feeling, man? Big win this weekend.
Man, feeling great. A lot of great football action this weekend, man. So, you can't beat it. We got a chance to finish early, got a chance to catch a late game, got a chance to catch another late game, finish up. So, man, great football this weekend. Like you said, man, let's get in it. Let's rock, baby.
I mean, Coach, it's funny because there was at one point after that 1 o'clock game over in the MEAC, man, I thought that was going to be the front page news. And then out in Las Vegas, man, we had absolute chaos in Allegiant, man, with Jackson State falling to Grambling State. But I want to start in the MEAC here, Coach. Delaware State, Deshaun Jackson knock off North Carolina Central on the road, Coach, in Durham for their homecoming. Coach, I'm going to be the first one to say, I always admit when I'm wrong. I completely misjudged Deshaun Jackson, this Delaware State team. I had no faith that they were going to be able to compete this year, but Coach, they just keep proving me wrong. And it's time to kind of look at them as a potential. I don't even know if you can label them a dark horse, Coach, but this team hasn't won the MEAC except for I think once in like 2012, and the last one was in like the 80s. I want to say it was way before I was born. Coach, is this the year Delaware State can finally get it done?
I mean, you said you'll be the first to say it. I'll be the second to say that I was just kind of like, slow down, everybody, before we start crowning them, But that win right there, I think, B, we can say that's a statement win. They've been building momentum all year, so hats off to coach for getting that done. It's not fully locked up yet, but, if they can take this and turn it into something else, you know, they got a shot. The big game now is next week. Will they be able to come back and hit the ground running, or will they still be in Durham living off this, big time win? So hats off to them for right now for going in their homecoming and handling business, man. That was really impressive.
I'll say this, coach. People love the passing attack, right? Everybody wants their offense to throw the football around the yard and look like what was it like the 1999 Rams, just throwing it around, or like the Chargers back
Ready to
in like
shovel them
the
turf.
the Coryell days, Don Coryell. Listen, when you have a dominant run game like this, coach, it opens up so many things offensively. And I don't think their defense is very good, right? But when you run the football like you do, coach, it takes so much pressure off your defense because you're constantly winning the time of possession. You're constantly demoralizing the other team. And because this is what's probably aggravating for other teams, you know they're going to run the football. Like going into the game, you have no other game plan, coach, but we're going to stop Marquise Gillis. We're going to stop this rushing attack. We know Caden Bennett can beat us with his legs. Coach, it doesn't matter if you load the box. They still average, I think it was like 4 yards per carry before contact this weekend. Insane.
Moving folks out the way, man. And the thing about it that's really cool is that he's a receiver. He's an offensive coach, and you think that a receiver who really has success wouldn't be game plan wise wanting to run the ball, but he's doing it, and they're doing it at a great clip, like you just said, almost 4 yards a carry. And then when your defense is not good, this is how you help them. You keep the other team's offense off the field. So I mean, they're playing great complementary football right now, and hats off to them again. You first, I'm coming in second, saying I was wrong. I was dead wrong. Up to this point, I was wrong.
And I think what they've done so well, because we talk about quarterback play in HBCU football and how it's down, right? Like you have Andrew Body, like here at the top, right? He just is a game changer. But then you got a bunch of people that always say, we don't have any game changers in HBCU football at the quarterback spot. What Delaware State is doing with Caden Bennett, coach, speaks so much to the coaching staff, in my opinion, because we see a bunch of teams that have a guy that, listen, maybe they're not as explosive as Caden, right? And he's super experienced, but coach, he's not a passer, in terms of just pocket passer. We're going to back him up and throw it 30 times a game. But coach, he finished 9 for 15 212 yards and 3 touchdowns. When they took the shots on the RPOs, it was perfect placement. And I think you could speak to this too, coach, because I know you've been run and designed RPO based offenses. When the accuracy is there, coach, you have to give your receiver a chance to make plays with his legs and break it off further. Every single time Bennett needed to make a throw, he put it in a spot that allowed the wide receiver to make a guy miss in the open field. And the coach that maybe 10-yard RPO pass went for 60 yards or 30 yards or 20 yards. And those small passes turn into explosive plays. I want to say he averaged, coach, 21 yards per completion this weekend against North Carolina Central. When you have a rushing attack paired with playmakers on the outside and a quarterback that can put it in the right spot with so much experience that isn't going to blink in a hostile environment, this team could be dangerous moving down the stretch.
Yeah, and then when you have that accuracy, man, it keeps you on track. You may get a little behind, and it may be a third and second and 12. A penalty or something sets you back, and then you're able to get right back on track for third down because he gives you an opportunity, putting that pressure on the defense. And then when he's like you said, like when he's clicking with his throws, that's a tough thing to stop, because now do we stop the run? Do we sell out to do that, or do we kind of try to play those windows in between, or do we just completely take away the pass? Well, either way, right now, he's got you in a catch-22.
The biggest thing for Central, I do understand, because like when you look at the box score, coach, if you didn't watch the game, it looks like Central just moved the ball at will, and it really wasn't like that. And I think there were like 2 possessions, I think, where this game really changed. It was the interception in the early second quarter, coach. You remember, I think it got tipped at the line, and it was just a fluke play, right? It gets tipped. The defensive lineman stops running, coach, and catches it like a punt almost. Just a heads up. Like, you love to see that from D lineman, right? Be aware your teammate tipped it, get the pick, get the turnover, because if that drops, coach, they get a field goal. They get another opportunity to move the football down the field. And then, coach, there were 2 drives in the fourth quarter. So Central scored on 2 possessions into the third, beginning of the fourth quarter. They go 3 plays, -5 yards on 1 drive. And then the next drive, they go all the way down the field, coach. They fumble at like the 1-yard line. Coach, and listen, I love Chris Mosley, and I spoke so highly of how good he is. Coach, there's no reason to hurdle in that situation.
No, just
Stay on the
protect the ball.
ground and
Yep,
protect the football.
yep,
And I
yep.
know it seems like I'm nitpicking. I'm not taking a shot at the kid, but coach, we talk about knowing the moment that you're in. There's no reason to put the ball at risk like that. And that right there ended the ball game.
Well, in that part right there, like you said, the risk is not worth the reward is not worth the risk, because at worst, okay, you do get stopped. What are you at, the half foot? But you still have the ball. You know what I mean? You do that, you lose possession, and like you said, the game is over. But going back to Dale State, when you're trying to win ball games, you're trying to turn a program around, you're trying to win a championship, you got to have those kind of breaks, man. Ball tipped in the air. Uh, Probably if we did that 10 times, it'd probably be caught twice. But you got to be able to have those breaks when you're trying to break through in the program, man. And that's what they've had. And that's what they needed yesterday, and they got them.
Man, you just got to give. Listen, I thought Walker had a really good game at quarterback. I got to give him props. I thought Delaware State did a really good job containing Chris Mosley too. He's been so explosive. I mean, coach, you saw a week ago though. Man, he embarrassed FAMU, like single-handedly embarrassed
Oh, yeah.
FAMU the
Oh,
other
yeah.
week. For as bad as Delaware State's defense may be statistically, they found a way to take out their number 1 playmaker, and you got to give them credit for that. And then also, too, coach, offensively, back-to-back punts to start the game. You look at what they did, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of their last 8 drives, they scored a touchdown on, coach. Multiple of those just ate the clock up, were 7 or more plays where they just walked it down the field. They had 1 drive where it was 2 plays, 95 yards. That was the big explosive play. I think it was the RPO that just got taken for a big play where he hit, I think it's Lolly, who had 3 touchdowns this week, coach. You talk about your old wide receiver award, 5 catches,
Yeah.
3 touchdowns this weekend. That's
Yeah.
some damn good efficiency right there. But
And,
coach, they just consistently put some drives. Like the last 2 scoring drives for Delaware State, coach, a combined 19 plays took up almost 11 minutes off the clock in the fourth quarter.
and if you're trying to, salt away a win, that's the way you do it. Time of possession is everything, man. Especially like I said, when the team on the other side is very explosive, and then you're not maybe very good defensively. That's what you got to do, man. Keep that clock moving, and with those timing rules, it's a lot easier to do when you're picking up first downs and you're taking your time and being efficient.
The MEAC standings right now, coach, and we're going to move on here to the SWAC. Delaware State 5-3, 1-0 in conference. They should be 6-2. Refs kind of got in the way there in the Sacred Heart game. South Carolina State blows out Norfolk. Listen, that whole thing in Norfolk has really fallen apart, and it is
Yeah.
getting a little bit uncomfortable. Then there's rumors that Dawson Odoms is like texting former players and coaches saying it ain't as easy as it looks, right? It's hilarious. But you got South Carolina State involved, but they got some flaws too. I don't think Delaware State's looking at that as a game that they can't win. Howard, coach, beats Morgan in overtime, 4-4, 1-0 in conference. And then you got Central 0-1 in conference, 5-3 overall. Morgan State and Norfolk at 0-1 in conference, both with losing records. Norfolk is 1-7, coach. I mean, Central's in such a bad spot now, man. Like, and me and you have relationships with guys on that staff. Me and you are both big fans of Matt Leone. Me and you are big fans of Trey Oliver, man. And you just kind of look around, coach, and I think Trey would would understand this criticism at some point, man. You just have to win the games that you're supposed to. Like, you eventually you can't just keep saying, "Oh, this one-off games where anything can happen in football." It's like this is a trend now where every year there's just this head scratcher, whether it's an out of conference like Elon last year, New Hampshire this year,
Yeah.
Campbell the year before, if you remember when Campbell blew
Yeah.
him out with Mike Minter. And then there's a game in conference, South Carolina State, Howard, Delaware State, where you just don't deliver and play up to your potential. And again, coach, they're not going to be playoff eligible if they win out. And I don't think they're going to get in on the bubble this year. It's way too tight with the Ivy Leagues getting in. So now you're looking at if you don't win out and Delaware State lose 2 games or potentially find a way to get into a 3-way tie with somebody, your season's over again.
Yeah, and it's you can't continue to like you said hope for help, because that winning and then going to check the phone to see what the other team is doing, that becomes very nerve-wracking. But you've got to take care of what you got to take care of, regardless of what it is. And I get it, college football is very different now, no doubt. But if you're supposed to swat the mosquito, you've got to swat the mosquito. You can't let him get from under your neck. You've got to go ahead and you got to take care of that, because you just don't know from week to week what's going to happen when you're trying to get help fighting from behind.
Coach, moving over to the SWAC here to keep this thing pushing. I'm going to be on. Listen, man, I like to think I know a little bit of college football, and I think I've proven that. And listen, man, no one's going to question your football acumen either. But I don't think either one of us saw Grambling State knocking off Jackson in Las Vegas, 26-24, game-winning field goal here, 44 yards, man. We know the narrative around SWAC special teams. Went out
Yeah.
there and just crushed it. What a kick from that kid. 4th and 1, coach. I was a little nervous. There were still 21 seconds left, and I was like, I still might go for this. Like, I don't 44 yards is a long field goal, and he did a great job. Coach, obviously the storyline here, Jacoby Morgan goes down with an injury. There's a ton of rumors that he might be out for the rest of the year. We'll let Jackson and TC confirm that hopefully Monday in the SWAC press conference, but we'll see. Coach, though, man, Jared Lockhart came in, played pretty well, led 2 big touchdown drives there in the 4th quarter. But again, man, Zay T-Set had a hell of a game before his injury, man. And I know we're all praying for him and hoping he's okay. I know I've seen some questions in the chat. Listen, I got a guy on the staff. We still don't have a full update yet on Zay, and I'm sure that will hopefully come out today. But I don't have an update, coach, and I don't want to speculate on his status or anything. But just a real scary moment. But coach, man, your takeaways here: Grambling State, huge win over Jackson.
Oh, yes. First and foremost, like you said, hoping for nothing but the best for that kid, and that he's able to make a full recovery from whatever it is, what happened. And then you gotta tip your hat, man. That might have been good from a few more yards out. He really got a chance to bang that kick through. And, you got to go back and look, man. It's always every year, and it's one of those deals of where, I don't care how bad a team is, whatever, going into certain games, they always have that team's number. And it's starting to shape up that Graham is starting to get Jackson's number from year to year. One of those things where last year, I don't even think that game was close last year, right?
No.
And then you come into this year and it looked like it was starting to get away. Then the champs came and brought the game back, actually took the lead, and then boom, before you know it, you know, Grambling, hats off to those kids, hats off to that coaching staff for not letting those kids at the point when they lost the lead drop their heads, kept their heads up, made a few plays, got themselves an opportunity to have a chance to win the ball game, and boom, kicked the ball and made it through, with a little distance, man. So, really, really exciting ball game, man. Can't do nothing but tip your hat to that kid and that team.
Coach, I want to ask you two questions because we always talk about the perspective of a college coach. One, with the T-set injury, what do you like in that moment? What do you tell your team? And I think on both sides, right? I know everyone focuses on Grambling because it's an emotional moment. That's your teammate. He's down. They got the ambulance on the field. But coach, what about Jackson too? Because it affects the opposing team as well. Because you never want to see someone on the opposing team get hurt like that. Coach, from the coaching perspective, how do you get your team locked back in, especially in such a crucial moment on a potential game-winning drive?
When we start with Grambling, in that situation, you've got to make sure those kids understand that, hey, we've got to finish this regardless of what just happened. You're not trying to be insensitive, but we've got to finish this deal strong for him, if nothing else, and then you kind of make sure that you want to give them the points that, he's fine, he's conscious or whatever it may be, so that will at least ease their mind in that situation, but get them, hey, gotta lock back in. We got to finish this, and then we'll worry about all that other stuff a little bit later. From the other sideline, you've got to make sure that you don't think at this moment the game's over because that's their best player that's gone. No, we've got to finish and we've got to lock in even more now because we didn't prepare for this, to happen. So it's not like we know a lot about what's going on, but we can't let off the gas because we feel like they've lost their best player. It's at the end of the ball game. We've got this wrapped up now. So TC probably went in, tighten it up just a little bit in that little circle before they, resume play. But, that's the two perspectives from both sidelines when you have that type of break happen in the ball game.
And I just want to say, man, Zay played so well while he was healthy. What 16 of 26, 232, two touchdowns, coach,
Big
and on
game
top
for
of
him,
that,
right?
yeah, a rushing touchdown as well. So three total touchdowns. Played really well against a good Jackson State defense. And I think for the Jackson side, man, you could just tell. And listen, I don't. Do I think the entire loss is going to be pinned on Jacobian's injury? No, right? You can't blame that injury for the entire loss, coach. But man, it really took the wind out of that team's sails when he went down early. And coach, you've been on teams with guys like Felix Harper who are experienced leaders, right?
Hmm.
Losing Felix, man, that people just look at the offensive impact of it, coach. Your defense plays differently sometimes when your quarterback goes down because it's like, well, damn, it doesn't matter what we do now, our offense isn't going to be able to score. And the pressure, like people just look at one side of it. But if you've ever been on a football team, man, losing a key player like that, whether it's a star quarterback, star running back, man, it affects both sides of the football. And I just think Jackson really, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but more like lost kind of focus, coach. They lost that edge they had early. They were up 10-0, loser starting quarterback, and the offense just went anemic from probably about 4 or 5 drives after his injury. And coach, I want you to speak on this a little bit. They've moved to Parker Stofa, who was kind of the consensus backup. There was a lot of rumors that they wanted to redshirt the freshman Jared Lockhart, who started in the Tuskegee game. Man, Parker Stofa just, I don't think he played poorly, coach, but the offense just wasn't clicking at the same level that you would want it to. They moved to the true freshman, get that spark. He leads 2 big touchdown drives. How hard is it as a coaching staff in that moment when you have a freshman you're wanting to redshirt, but you know is talented with an experienced backup? How do you make that decision on who gets the first snaps? And for you, do you think the criticism that TC's getting on social media about not just going straight to Lockhart is fair, or do you think from a coaching perspective it's more complicated than that?
I mean, it's a lot that comes into play because of the redshirt rules, you know. So you've got to figure out in that moment how many he's played, and then at that point, you know, you're gonna always go with it. In old football, you'd always go with the younger one, right? Because you'd have him
Right.
longer. But in this situation here, because you have a veteran and then you have another person that has minutes, and then you have the freshman, you know, you probably want to go with the number two guy, so to speak, and save that game if I can for the freshman, because I think he may have played in two. So you might, you know, you want to save those other two and then kind of work him in from there. And you know, at that point, you've got to figure that maybe my running game can help us get back in it. Didn't happen. So you're still trying to win the game. And I think at that point, you know, someone may have brought it up like, Coach, he'd have one left for a red shirt. You know, we got to try to do something. And then they bring him in. So, you know, one of those deals there for me is probably how that played out. But, you know, again, you're down, you're grasping for straws. I hear the atmosphere was great. I know it looked
Yes.
great, you know, when I was able to get to the television after we finished. It looked like it was a great crowd. But you know, you may have thought that the lights were too big for that, for the true freshman to come into the situation. So you know, there's a couple of different factors, man, that probably went on the headsets about that. So, you know, again, you go with one that doesn't work. Luckily, you have another one that's primed up and ready to go, and you go from there. Now, the big thing, B, is going to be this week, depending on what that injury is. Where are we going? How are we going to move forward? Because if I'm not mistaken, like I said, I think that was number 3 game for the freshman or whatever.
I think it
This
was 2. 2. I
two,
think he played Tuskegee, and then this was the second game he played in.
two. So he's got 2 more before that red shirt is gone. So now the injury report is going to be huge. And then this week of practice is going to be huge because either way it goes, you got to get one of those guys ready, and the other guy's got to be ready because he's a play away from having to go. And then you get into what Alabama State last year, where
Yes.
you've got to find a start work up a number 3 because that number 3 is 2 plays away, depending on that injury report. So you know, there's so much going on this week for them that they've got to address and take care of really, really quick.
Well, look at Grambling. T-Set goes down, coach. Their backup was already
Same
out
thing.
from an
Same thing.
injury
Yeah.
earlier this year. They had
Yeah.
like a walk-on that had to come in as a third string. And I just want to say, one, I understand people can criticize the play calling. And listen, he's our guy. But Quinn, like, man, to not have a spy on this kid that has shown he can't really throw the football, 4th and 9, coach, and you let him get out of the pocket
Yeah.
and run for it. Like, I'm just like, it was frustrating for me watching it because I was like, that's the one thing you couldn't allow to happen. Make him
Mm.
throw it. He has to throw it.
And the guys up front have got to understand that. You know, that's kind of where some, you know, and Quinn will put it squarely on him. But you know, as a football enthusiast, as a person that really loves the game, you know, those guys have got to understand the pass rushers, the players have got to understand it might look good going inside, but I've got to keep outside containment.
Yep.
I can't let this guy get
Rush
outside.
lanes.
I got to
Everybody
stay in my
knows it
lane.
from the D tackles to the ends. Because when you hear rush lanes, coach, a lot of average fans think just the ends, right? And it's like you don't want to get too far upfield. You don't want to get too far outside. The D tackles can't get upfield as much. And I think when the way the pocket collapsed, he was just able to step up, coach, and there was nobody there. And the one thing you can say about the kid, he's athletic enough. He beat the dude to the edge for the
Athletic
first down.
enough, athletic enough, and gutsy enough. Because if you don't get there, you know, that's a wrap. Of course, you know, that's game, but you know, to get there and to, you know, just count the 3 basically and take off and do it. Unbelievable play by that kid. Big, big, big heart to even try that, you know, that kind of thing. But, you know, again, those guys up front can't get pushed into the other one's gap. You can't have 2 people in one gap. And then, like you said, you can't get too wide. And then linebackers have got to have eyes on that as well and understand where your drops are, how deep I'm dropping. You know the chains in that situation. No need for me to be dropping 15 yards and it's 4th and 9. You know what I
or
mean?
or
That
have
kind
your
of thing.
back turned to the like.
Yeah.
But also to be fair, and I don't know, like so different teams scout differently. Maybe they studied him a little bit, right, just in case T-set did go down. But I do wonder how like in depth the scouting report was on the walk-on third string quarterback.
And I got to believe, just from being in those rooms, in those situations, coaching on the defensive side of the ball, you know, I can tell you right now, the third guy never came up.
No, it was
So
all about T-set. It had to be. But like I think off a bye week, it's tough too, right, Coach? I mean, you
oh yeah,
had 2 weeks to prepare. Starting quarterback goes down. Their quarterback goes down the game winning drive, but also too, I know a lot of people were complaining that it wasn't a catch. Regardless if it's not a catch, that was a gutsy throw on that last play to set them up for the field goal. Because
and
if he misses that throw, Coach, I don't think the kid makes a 50+ yarder.
no, 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 no. It had room, it had distance, but it didn't have that kind of distance. And then you kind of go into it. At the end of the day, you leave it into the refs' hands. I've seen worse calls than that. You know what I mean? But at that point, you know, man, you got to tip your hat. That's all you can do. You got to tip your hat, man.
And I do want to give a little credit. Listen, because we're spending a lot of time giving Grambling credit, and they deserve it, right, Coach? The Lockhart kid, what he brought that was better than Stofa was his running ability. I think in TC's offense, Coach, and you've coached against TC, you've been around him, you know him really well. You've got to have a quarterback with a little bit of mobility. There's not many kids that are just going to stand back there and throw it are going to thrive in that offense. You got to be able to move the pocket. And I think that's where you saw Lockhart thrive, coaches. When things broke down, he was able to make some plays with his legs. And I don't know why, coach. Like, I know the kid's big, right? I think he's like 6'4" ish. Bro, the defense just looks scared to tackle him at times. Like Grambling had the angle, and it's like in my head as an offensive lineman, knowing defensive guys, I don't care how big he is. Like he's not Cam Newton at the end of the day. He's still skinnier than him. Bro, you gotta get downhill and hit him.
Yeah, you got to
Everybody
touch.
kept waiting on him. And because you've coached defense and you've coached defensive backs, you never teach your defensive backs to wait till the ball carrier gets to you.
No, you better go get him.
Go get him. And there were so many times where Grambling's defense just looked like they froze and let Lockhart bring the run to them. And it's like, go hit the quarterback.
And I
Did
think
that
they were trying to figure him out as well. Not knowing a whole lot, whatever, whatever. But then again, like you said, that stature uh, kind of causes hesitant. And then if there's a little more game left, I think they start to see like, okay, maybe he's not Cam Newton, he's not downhill, he's not physical. Okay, now we've got a feel for this guy, and now we start bringing it downhill to him. But yeah, you can't be hesitant in that situation. You better go attack him before he attacks you.
and he made a hell of a throw to Rimbert over the middle. Coach, I don't know if you watched the game at that point. I think it was the second to last touchdown Jackson has. It was like that 60-yard bomb. He
Yeah, yeah,
threw that on a rope. Coach, for a
yeah.
true freshman in that moment to throw that pass, man, the kid deserves a round of applause. And I thought he played really, really well, man, getting thrown into it. And now, coach, he's probably going to be the guy going forward. Like someone said in the chat, in the age of the transfer portal, uh, a trying to save him for trying to redshirt him for a year you might not even get.
Yeah.
Like, bro, it's all out the window. You got to go win a championship now.
But I think that might have been the initial thought with Morgan being there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now, like I said, it just kind of goes back to now. What is this injury report going to be? What's the timeline for him to get back? How serious it is? And remember now, they've got to keep winning. It's not like they can shut it down. They got to keep winning because
Got to
Alabama
win out.
State Alabama State is still right there, and they looked really strong yesterday. From skimming through some of the highlights and the score, box score. They're going to keep playing, and they're probably going to turn it up even more now because they know there may be just a little bit of trouble going on up there in Jackson.
Yeah, coach, just to give you a head, like, I mean, this is where it's tough, right? This kid's going to have to play 2 more games not at home before he gets a single home game. They got to go to Tallahassee and Bragg for a 6 p.m. kickoff next week for a FAMU team that's won 2 straight games. Then you got to go to Itabena, which
Always tough.
it's a tough environment for different reasons, but Valley hasn't played well this year. I think he'll be fine there. That FAMU game is a tricky one. But then, Coach, you got a red-hot Bethune-Cookman team that can put up points against anybody. And that's going to be an interesting game. And then obviously you guys head to the vet to the last weekend of the season. And so you look ahead. I mean, listen, I'm going to give on Valley, and that's no offense to Valley. And anybody watching, I'm sorry. I'm going to give on Valley. But the other 3 games aren't guaranteed wins, especially without Morgan. So, like, you look ahead, and it's just that pressure is going to be on, especially if Alabama State continues to look how they looked yesterday. Because, Coach, I don't know because I believe the Magic City Classic happened right around the time you guys were playing.
Yeah. I didn't get a chance to see it. Just kind of skimmed through highlights and
Bro,
box
49-6 at halftime.
Yeah.
They had the scout team in.
Wasn't it like 6-0 or
6-0 Alabama A&M?
At some point, I remember because I remember hearing it over the loudspeaker, and then I think the next score I got was something like 47-6. I was like, "Whoa, what happened?" That kind of thing. But yeah, they're playing. Hats off to them because they could have automatically said, we're not going to be able to catch Jackson, go through the motions, kids shut it down, kids redshirting, things like that. But it seems to be that those kids have kept playing. Hats off to them.
Locked in. I mean, Andrew Body at like 6. Coach, he didn't even play in the second half. Andrew Body, 6 total touchdowns, almost 400 yards of total offense yesterday in 2 quarters. I mean, the kid is just unbelievable. Like right now, Coach, 7 games, 70% completion percentage, 1,600 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 1 pick, almost 500 rushing yards, and another 2 rushing touchdowns.
Man, that's crazy.
Good Lord, man. This kid, SWAC Offensive Player of the Year debate is over. I mean, just go ahead and SWAC needs to announce it on Monday. Andrew Body, SWAC Offensive Player of the Year. It is a wrap on that one because we got a massive game this upcoming weekend as we've kind of wrap this up. Massive game next weekend. PV, Bama State, I believe, is next weekend. Massive game there. That's
must
a
have for both. Must have for both programs.
Yeah, huge. So right now, Coach, standings, PV leading the West 4-0. Texas Southern sitting there at 3-1. Everybody else, man, out barring just devastation, is probably out of it. You got Grambling at 2-2 in conference, UAPB at 1-3. You guys at 1-3, Southern at 0-4, 1-7. God, that just 1-7 overall is crazy. I didn't think that, and I thought they played good last week. This weekend.
That's a perfect lead into our last little segment.
Go ahead.
Who are you thinking, man?
If I had to give a top 5 right now,
potential candidates to be the next head coach at SU. Who you think?
So I've had a ton of conversations about Joel Taylor at West Georgia as the head coach. Who's the head coach at West Georgia? He's a name that keeps coming up. I've also heard the offensive coordinator or passing game coordinator, quarterbacks coach over there, Reed Sanders from West Georgia, is in the running. He's making a big push for the job. He played at Southern, Coach. He was a quarterback, and he was the running backs coach in 2017 when Leone was there. Leone and Trey and Chinnis, I think all of them were on the staff. So he was under Odoms. He was a GA for them or another assistant under them. I think Alvin Parker is going to be a big candidate here. I think Alvin Parker's done a really good job, and I've heard he's a favorite for a handful of people. And out of the box hire would be a Matt Leone, bringing him back to Baton Rouge maybe, and then also too a name that no one's really mentioning, maybe a Tyrone Nix, defensive coordinator from Tarleton State, Southern Miss Hall of Fame legend, knows the state of Mississippi, has recruited Texas, Louisiana. Because I don't know if you've paid attention to Tarleton's defense, pretty damn good right now. So the question would be, can they afford to get Tyrone from Tarleton? Because Tarleton's got some money.
And they're making that move, no doubt.
Yeah, they're going to make the FBS move sooner rather than later. But also, too, Coach, you know this, coaches will take a pay cut sometimes. Not a pay cut, but will take a little bit just a marginal pay increase just to get a chance to be head coach. Now, the one thing I am concerned about with some of the candidates I named, there are some people around Southern that don't believe that that job is one for a first time head coach just because it's a pressure cooker, that championship expectations. Like, that's not a job that you can learn to be a head coach on the job there, which is why you hear names like Joel Taylor, Alvin Parker. But I still think when you look at like Reed Sanders, you look at like a Matt Leone, Tyrone Nix, like those guys are ready to be head coaches. And I don't know if it'll necessarily be a massive learning curve for them. And you're going to have pressure anywhere, coach, to have to deliver championship expectations. So I'm going to be interested, man. I'm very curious to see the timeline too, coach, because I've heard different things. I've heard they want to make a move quickly. I heard it probably won't happen until after the season. So we're going to see how long Southern really takes to make this decision.
And what's funny about that, because people say hiring someone before the end of the season is crazy, but if you look at it, man, that happens all the time, B. Where someone's operating as an interim and they are last game or heading to a bowl game and they've already named that guy, and then somebody's giving an interview to the guy from you know that's taking over the program tomorrow, kind of thing. So that's not something that's far-fetched. The question I would have is, Alcorn went out on a limb a few years ago and hired a Jay Hobson. And safe to say that worked out. They took a lot of flack, still take flack for hiring, Coach Hobson. Will Southern even look to an established guy that's been there before, like a Matt Leone? You know what I mean? Football has changed. How will they look at it? How will they attack it? Like you said, the first year thing, it's not like those guys who have never been head coaches before, it's not like they don't have the resumes. This is not their first year in college football. This is not their first year in FCS football. They're not new to it. It's just one of those things where they just hadn't had the HC behind their name. So will they be willing to do that? They're on the hook for a lot of money for their last two hires. How much are they willing to get into now? Because nobody's not going to take that out of their contract now just because, they're going to still have buyouts. They're going to still have provisions in those contracts that they won't. So, how much are they willing to go in on this third guy and still paying the other two?
A dark horse name you mentioned is this would almost be exactly the same scenario as that Jay Hobson hire. Will Hall,
Yeah.
former Southern Miss head coach,
Yep.
had success
Alabama guy.
had success at West Georgia at the, I think what was a D2 level at that time.
Yep.
So I would think Will Hall is an interesting name that you could potentially look at for that job. And also too, I've heard that Fred's not necessarily going to be looked at as a potential candidate, but you'll never know if they go on a run here and win some games. So we'll see. I don't know what that would necessarily look like, coach, but I mean, it's very interesting that it came out reportedly, coach, and that Graves was let go earlier than expected because he promised the media and told the media he was going to make a change at offensive coordinator and didn't. And lied to the media, and McNair was not calling the plays like he promised, because McNair came out of his press conference and said this is the first week he's calling plays. So that's a whole nother can of worms. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen that happen before, but
no, this is the first. Wow. Okay.
That's kind of tough. And I will say this, it was kind of messy to like let him do all the press conferences on Monday, knowing you were going to fire him at 6. Just
don't let me work all day.
Especially because the interim, I would get it, coach, if it was a first-time head coach, you didn't want him doing all the media right off the bat. But bro, your intern was a coach in this conference for for years. McNair didn't know how to do a press conference.
Yeah, man. Don't let me work all day. Don't have me getting up early in the morning, coming in there and
Had him on the coach's show.
Yeah,
had him on the coach's show.
Don't do that to me.
That's
now we gotta click back into the coach's show and do it again. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I just wrapped up the coach's show at 7. I get fired at 7:15. No, we gotta do a whole nother coach's show at 7:30 because I gotta talk about this. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's rough. Don't do me like that. Don't do me like that.
That's nasty work right there. But Coach, man, listen, it was a great weekend, man. Me and Coach trying to at least get one episode in a week, man. We were going to be busy up until about Wednesday, so we wanted to go ahead and knock this thing out on Sunday. Coach got a meeting to go to. I got more shows to do. You can catch me on HBCU Nightly tonight, man. Me and Timothy will have a FCS recap up tomorrow morning, man. But me and Coach Trevor will try to be back later this week with a Week
Yep, yep.
10 preview. The season's going by so damn fast, so it's moving along way quicker than I wanted it to, man. But for Coach Leroy Frederick, for myself, the Blue Bloods FCS Football Central on SI, we are out for right now.